Hot coffee from the meagre little buffet at Pythion. There'd be no restaurant car until midday. A painless visit from the Greek customs and passport control. And then the berths were folded away as the train hurried south towards the Gulf of Ennis at the head of the Aegean. Outside there was extra light and colour. The air was drier. The men at the little stations and in the fields were handsome. Sunflowers, maize, vines and racks of tobacco were ripening in the sun. It was, as Darko had said, another day. Bond washed and shaved under the amused eyes of Tatiana. She approved of the fact that he put no oil on his hair. "It is a dirty habit," she said. "I was told that many Europeans have it. We would not think of doing it in Russia. It dirties the pillows. But it is odd that you in the West do not use perfume. All our men do." "We wash," said Bond dryly. In the heat of her protests, there came a knock on the door. It was Kerim. Bond let him in. Kerim bowed towards the girl. "What a charming domestic scene," he commented cheerfully, lowering his bulk into the corner near the door. "I have rarely seen a handsomer pair of spies." Tatiana glowered at him. "I am not accustomed to Western jokes," she said coldly. Kerim's laugh was disarming. "You'll learn, my dear. In England they are great people for jokes. There is considered proper to make a joke of everything. I have also learned to make jokes. They grease the wheels. I have been laughing a lot this morning. Those poor fellows at Uzun Kopru. I wish I could be there when the police telephoned the German consulate in Istanbul. That is the worst of forged passports. They're not difficult to make, but it's almost impossible to forge also their birth certificate. The files of the country which is supposed to have issued them. I fear the careers of your two comrades have come to a sad end," Mrs. Sommer said. "How did you do it?" Bond knotted his tie. "Money and influence. $500 to the conductor, some big talk to the police. It was lucky our friend tried a bribe. A pity that crafty Benz next door," he gestured at the wall, "didn't get involved. I couldn't do the passport trick twice. We will have to get him some other way. The man with the boils was easy. He knew no German, and travelling without a ticket is a serious matter. Ah, well, the day has started favourably. We have won the first round. But our friend next door will now be very careful. He knows what he has to reckon with. Perhaps that is for the best. It would have been a nuisance having to keep you both under cover all day. Now we can move about. We even have lunch together, as long as you bring the family jewels with you. We must watch to see if he makes a telephone call at one of the stations. But I doubt if he could tackle the Greek telephone exchange. He will probably wait until we are in Yugoslavia. But there I have my machine. We can get reinforcements if we need them. It should be a most interesting journey. There's always excitement on the Orient Express." Kerim got to his feet. He opened the door. "And romance?" He smiled across the compartment. "I will call you at lunchtime. Greek food is worse than Turkish, but even my stomach is in the service of the Queen." Bond got up and locked the door. Tatiana snapped. "Your friend is not Kulturny. It is disloyal to refer to your Queen in that manner." Bond sat down with her. "Tanya," he said patiently, "that is a wonderful man. He's also a good friend. As far as I'm concerned, he can say anything he likes. He's jealous of me. He would like to have a girl like you, so he teases you. It's a form of flirting. You should take it as a compliment." "You think so?" She turned her large blue eyes on his. "But what he said about his stomach and the head of your state, that was being rude to your Queen. It would be considered very bad manners to say such a thing in Russia." They were still arguing when the train ground to a halt in the sun-baked, fly-swarming station of Alexandropolis. Bond opened the door into the corridor, and the sun poured in across a pale, mirrored sea that married, almost without horizon, into a sky the colour of the Greek flag. They had lunch, with the heavy bag under the table between Bond's feet. Kerim quickly made friends with the girl. The MGB man, called Benz, avoided the restaurant car. They saw him on the platform buying sandwiches and beer from a buffet on wheels. Karim suggested they ask him to make a 4 at bridge. Bond suddenly felt very tired, and his tiredness made him feel that they were turning this dangerous journey into a picnic. Tatiana noticed his silence. She got up and said that she must rest. As they went out of the wagon restaurant, they heard Karim calling gaily for brandy and cigars. Back in the compartment, Tatiana said firmly, "Now it is you who will sleep." She drew down the blind and shut out the hard afternoon light and the endless baked fields of maize and tobacco and wilting sunflowers. The compartment became a dark green underground cavern. Bond wedged the doors and gave her his gun and stretched out with his head in her lap and was immediately asleep. The long train snaked along the north of Greece below the foothills of the Rhodope Mountains. Xanthi came, and Drama, and Serai, and then they were in the Macedonian highlands, and the line swerved south towards Salonika. It was dusk when Bond awoke in the soft cradle of her lap. At once, as if she had been waiting for the moment, Tatiana took his face between her hands and looked down into his eyes and said urgently, "Dushka, how long shall we have this for?" For long. Bond's thoughts were still luxurious with sleep. But for how long? Bond gazed up into the beautiful, worried eyes. He cleared the sleep out of his mind. It was impossible to see beyond the next 3 days on the train, beyond their arrival in London. One had to face the fact that his girl was an enemy agent. His feelings would be of no interest to the interrogators from his service and from the ministries. Other intelligence services would also want to know what this girl had to tell them about the machine she had worked for. Probably at Dover she'd be taken away to the Cage, that well-centred private house near Guildford, where she would be put in a comfortable but oh so well-wired room. And the efficient men in plain clothes would come one by one and sit and talk with her, and the recorder would spin in the room below, and the records would be transcribed and sifted for their grains of new fact, and of course for the contradictions they would trap her into. Perhaps they'd introduce a stool pigeon, a nice Russian girl who'd commiserate with Tatiana over her treatment and suggest ways of escape, of turning double, of getting harmless information back to her parents. This might go on for weeks or months. Meanwhile, Bond would be tactfully kept away from her, unless the interrogators thought he could extract further secrets by using their feelings for each other. Then what? The changed name? The offer of a new life in Canada? The £1,000 a year she would be given from the secret funds? And where would he be when she came out of it all? Perhaps on the other side of the world. Or if he was still in London, how much of her feeling for him would have survived the grinding of the interrogation machine? How much would she hate or despise the English after going through all this? And for the matter of that, how much would have survived of his own hot flame? "Dushka," repeated Tatiana impatiently. "How long?" "As long as possible. It will depend on us. Many people will interfere. We shall be separated. It will not always be like this in a little room. In a few days we shall have to step out into the world. It will not be easy. It would be foolish to tell you anything else." Tatiana's face cleared. She smiled down at him. "You are right. I will not ask any more foolish questions. But we must waste no more of these days." She shifted his head and got up and lay down beside him. An hour later, when Bond was standing in the corridor, Darko Karim was suddenly beside him. He examined Bond's face. He said slyly, "You should not sleep so long. You have been missing the historic landscape of northern Greece, and it is time for the premier service." "All you think about is food," said Bond. He gestured back with his head. "What about our friend?" "He has not stirred. The conductor has been watching for me. That man will end up the richest conductor in the Wagon Lee Company. $500 for Goldfarb's papers, and now $100 a day retainer until the end of the journey." Karim chuckled. "I've told him he may even get a medal for his services to Turkey. He believes we're after a smuggling gang. They're always using this train for running Turkish opium to Paris. He's not surprised, only pleased that he's being paid so well. And now, have you found out anything more from this Russian princess you have in there? I still feel disquiet. Everything is too peaceful. Those 2 men we left behind may have been quite innocently bound for Berlin, as the girl says. This Benz may be keeping to his room because he's frightened of us. All is going well with our journey, and yet... Karim shook his head. These Russians are great chess players. When they wish to execute a plot, they execute it brilliantly. The game is planned minutely. The gambits of the enemy are provided for. They are foreseen and countered. At the back of my mind, Karim's face in the window was gloomy, I have a feeling that you and I and this girl are pawns on a very big board, that we're being allowed our moves because they do not interfere with the Russian game. But what is the object of the plot? Bond looked out into the darkness. He spoke to his reflection in the window. What can they want to achieve? We always get back to that. Of course, we have all smelt a conspiracy of some sort, and the girl may not even know what she's involved in. I know she's hiding something, but I think it's only some small secret she thinks is unimportant. She says she'll tell me everything when we get to London. Everything? What does she mean? She only says that I must have faith, that there is no danger. You must admit, Darko. Bond looked up for confirmation into the slow, crafty eyes. That she's lived up to her story. There was no enthusiasm in Kerim's eyes. He said nothing. Bond shrugged. I admit, I've fallen for her. But I'm not a fool, Darko. I've been watching for any clue, anything that would help. You know, one can tell a lot when certain barriers are down. Well, they are down. And I know she's telling the truth. At any rate, 90% of it. And I know she thinks the rest doesn't matter. If she's cheating, she's also being cheated herself. On your chess analogy, that's possible. But you still get back to the question of what it's all in aid of. Bond's voice hardened. And if you want to know, all I ask is to go on with the game until we find out. Karim smiled at the obstinate look on Bond's face. He laughed abruptly. If it was me, my friend, I would slip off the train at Salonika with the machine, and if you like, with the girl also, though that is not so important. I'd take a hired car to Athens, get on the next plane to London. But I was not brought up to be a sport. Kerim put irony into the words. This is not a game to me. It is business. For you it is different. You are a gambler. M also is a gambler. He obviously is, or he would not have given you a free hand. He also wants to know the answer to this riddle. So be it. But I like to play safe, to make certain, to leave as little as possible to chance. You think the odds look right? That they're in your favour? Darko Kerim turned and faced Bond. His voice became insistent. Listen, my friend. He put a huge hand on Bond's shoulder. This is a billiard table. An easy, flat, green billiard table. And you have hit your white ball and it is travelling easily and quietly towards the red. The pocket is alongside. Fatally, inevitably, you are going to hit the red, and the red is going into that pocket. It is the law of the billiard table, the law of the billiard room. But outside the orbit of these things, a jet pilot has fainted, and his plane is diving straight at that billiard room. Or a gas main is about to explode. Or lightning is about to strike. And the building collapses on top of you, and on top of the billiard table. Then, what has happened to the white ball that could not miss the red ball, and to the red ball that could not miss the pocket? The white ball could not miss according to the laws of the billiard table. But the laws of the billiard table are not the only laws, and the laws governing the progress of this train and of you to your destination are also not the only laws in this particular game. Kerim paused. He dismissed his harangue with a shrug of the shoulders. You already know these things, my friend, he said apologetically. And I've made myself thirsty talking platitudes. Hurry the girl up and we'll go and eat. But watch for surprises, I beg of you. He made a cross with his finger over the centre of his coat. I do not cross my heart. That is being too serious. But I cross my stomach, which is an important oath for me. There are surprises on the way for both of us. The gypsy said to watch out. Now I say the same. We can play the game on the billiard table, but we must both be on guard against the world outside the billiard room. My nose," he tapped it, "tells me so." Kerim's stomach made an indignant noise like a forgotten telephone receiver with an angry caller on the other end. "There," he said solicitously. "What did I say? We must go and eat." They finished their dinner as the train pulled into the hideous modern junction of Thessaloniki. With Bond carrying the heavy little bag, they went back down the train and parted for the night. "We shall soon be disturbed again," warned Kerim. "There is the frontier at 1 o'clock. The Greeks will be no trouble, but those Yugoslavs will like waking up anyone who's travelling soft. If they annoy you, send for me. Even in their country there are some names I can mention. I'm in the second compartment in the next carriage. I have it to myself. Tomorrow I will move into our friend Goldfarb's bed in number 12. For the time being, the first class is an adequate stable." Bond dozed wakefully as the train laboured up the moonlit valley of the Vardar towards the instep of Yugoslavia. Tatiana again slept with her head in his lap. He thought of what Darko had said. He wondered if he could not send the big man back to Istanbul when they'd got safely through Belgrade. It was not fair to drag him across Europe on an adventure that was outside his territory and with which he had little sympathy. Darko obviously suspected that Bond had become infatuated with the girl and wasn't seeing the operation straight anymore. Well, there was a grain of truth in that. It would certainly be safer to get off the train and take another route home. But Bond admitted to himself he couldn't bear the idea of running away from this plot, if it was a plot. If it wasn't, he equally couldn't bear the idea of sacrificing the 3 more days with Tatiana. And M had left the decision to him. As Darko had said, M also was curious to see the game through. Perversely, M too wanted to see what this whole rigmarole was about. Bond dismissed the problem. The journey was going well. Once again, why panic? 10 minutes after they'd arrived at the Greek frontier station of Idomeni, there was a hasty knocking on the door. It woke the girl. Bond slipped from under her head. He put his ear to the door. "Yes?" "Le conducteur, monsieur. There's been an accident. Your friend, Kerim Bey." "Wait," said Bond fiercely. He fitted the Beretta into its holster and put on his coat. He tore open the door. "What is it?" The conductor's face was yellow under the corridor light. "Come." He ran down the corridor towards the first class. Officials were clustered round the open door of the second compartment. They were standing, staring. The conductor made a path for Bond. Bond reached the door and looked in. The hair stirred softly on his head. Along the right-hand seat were 2 bodies. They were frozen in a ghastly death struggle that might have been posed for a film. Underneath was Kerim, his knees up in a last effort to rise. The taped hilt of a dagger protruded from his neck near the jugular vein. His head was thrust back and the empty bloodshot eyes stared up into the night. The mouth was contorted into a snarl. A thin trickle of blood ran down the chin. Half on top of him sprawled the heavy body of the MGB man called Benz, locked there by Kerim's left arm round his neck. Bond could see a corner of the Stalin moustache and the side of a blackened face. Kerim's right arm lay across the man's back almost casually. The hand ended in a closed fist and the knob of a knife hilt, and there was a wide stain on the coat under the hand. Bond listened to his imagination. It was like watching a film. The sleeping Darko, the man slipping quietly through the door, the 2 steps forward and the swift stroke of the jugular. Then the last violent spasm of the dying man as he flung up an arm and clutched his murderer to him and plunged the knife down towards the 5th rib. This wonderful man, who had carried the sun with him, now he was extinguished, totally dead. Bond turned briskly and walked out of the sight of the man who had died for him. He began, carefully, non-committally, to answer questions.